Hi, welcome back to Forsaken Joe. Grab a seat because what I'm about to share still makes my chest feel like it's caving in. It all started last night at dinner. She was cutting into her steak, talking about the new paint color she wanted for the living room, while I sat there, completely mute. I wasn't even trying to hide it. I just couldn't bring myself to speak, like every word would betray the storm I was holding back. "Why are you so quiet?" she finally asked, her tone playful at first. But I saw it, the tiniest flinch in her smile. I looked up at her, right into her eyes, and whispered, "Because everything." And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just broken, I was done. For weeks, I've been stuck in this bizarre nightmare where my brain refuses to accept what my heart already knows. You see, I'm not the kind of guy who snoops or spies. At least, I wasn't. But when the woman you've shared every piece of yourself with starts looking at her phone like it's a secret lover, you can't help it. You feel something is wrong. It's like walking into a room and knowing someone was just talking about you. It started when I found her earrings in the glove compartment of her car. I know what you're thinking. Maybe she just forgot them there. But here's the thing. She hadn't driven that car in a week. It sat in the driveway, untouched. And yet, when I opened it, I swear I caught the faintest whiff of a man's cologne. Not mine. Something sharper, heavier. My heart dropped into my stomach. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe the cologne was from a valet or an Uber driver, or whatever excuse I could invent at 2 a.m. while lying awake, staring at the ceiling fan spin. But then the text came. I wasn't even looking for it. Her phone buzzed on the counter while she was in the shower. Just one word on the screen. Tonight? No name, no context. Just that. And suddenly my world tilted, like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't come back from. I didn't open the phone. I couldn't. My hands shook too hard. Instead, I just sat on the couch, frozen, staring at that glowing screen like it was a bomb about to explode. So now, sitting across from her at dinner, I can't even bring myself to talk. My voice feels trapped in my throat because every time I look at her, all I see are questions I'm too terrified to ask. And that's why, when she asked why I was so quiet, all I could say was, "Because everything." Hi again, you're still on Forsaken Joe, and if you heard part 1, you know I'm drowning in silence. But what happened after that dinner? That's when the cracks really started to split open. The night after I muttered, "Because everything," she acted like nothing was wrong. She laughed, she kissed me goodnight. She scrolled through her phone in bed with her back turned to me. And that was when I decided I couldn't just sit there anymore, rotting in my own thoughts. I had to know. I had to see the truth with my own eyes, no matter how much it burned. The next morning, I waited until she was in the shower. I stood there, staring at her phone on the nightstand. My heart was pounding so loud, I swore she'd hear it through the bathroom door. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Face ID didn't work on me. Thank God for her lazy 4-digit passcode. I tapped it in. Wrong, I tried again. Wrong. On the third try, my stomach flipped. Did she change it again? I almost gave up, but I tried one last combination, the one she used for her old gym lock. It unlocked. My knees went weak. The messages weren't what I expected. They weren't even under a name, just a number. But the words, they weren't just flirty. They were electric, raw, the kind of messages that make your heart freeze mid-beat. He called her my escape, and she sent back pictures I can't unsee. Not fully explicit, but enough to twist the knife. I closed the phone, put it back exactly where it was, and sat on the edge of the bed. I felt hollow, like someone scooped me out and left a shell behind. I thought I'd confront her that night. I even rehearsed the words in my head. But when she came home from work, humming like she had nothing to hide, I froze. She kissed my cheek, told me she was starving, and I found myself setting the table like an obedient ghost. I don't know why I didn't tell her right then. Maybe because I wanted more proof. Maybe because a part of me didn't want this marriage to end on a single reckless conversation. The next day I followed her. I never thought I'd be the guy who tails his own wife through traffic, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles go white. But there I was, trailing her little blue SUV across town, heart hammering like I was in some kind of low-budget spy thriller. She wasn't going to work. She wasn't going to the gym. She drove to this tiny coffee shop on the edge of town, parked, and sat there. Just sat. I was about to leave, thinking maybe I was crazy, when he appeared. Some tall guy in a leather jacket, smiling like he owned the world. She lit up when she saw him. Not just happy, radiant, the kind of smile she hadn't given me in years. They didn't even go inside. He leaned into her car window, and I saw her hand touch his face. It was so casual, so familiar. My hands shook on the wheel. I wanted to slam on the gas, pull up next to them, and scream. But I didn't. I just sat there, my heart breaking into smaller pieces than I thought possible, until he got in his car and drove off. I went home before she did, parked the car like nothing happened. When she walked through the door an hour later, holding a bag of groceries, I pretended to be half asleep on the couch. She kissed my forehead, and I felt sick. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how long I'd been living with a stranger. If you've stuck with me this far, you probably think I should have confronted her already. I thought that too, 1,000 times. But every time I tried, my words turned to ash in my throat. It's like my brain was fighting itself, half of me screaming to rip off the bandage, the other half whispering, "What if you're wrong? What if there's some explanation?" Deep down, I knew there wasn't, but I wasn't ready to face the final blow. After seeing her with that guy, I became someone I didn't recognize. I started keeping track of everything, her texts, her schedule, even the mileage on her car. I would check the fuel gauge just to see if she'd been driving somewhere she didn't tell me about. I know how pathetic that sounds, but when you feel the ground cracking beneath you, you cling to every tiny piece of evidence. Like, maybe one clue will make it all make sense. 3 days after I followed her, I did something I'm not proud of. I installed a small camera in the corner of our living room. It wasn't even meant for spying, just an old baby monitor I dug out of the garage. But I set it up while she was at work, pointing toward the couch where she always sat with her phone. I told myself it was just in case I needed answers. But the truth? I needed to know what she was like when I wasn't in the room. Was she smiling at his texts while pretending to love me? Was I just a background character in my own life? That night, while she slept, I scrolled through the footage on my phone. There it was, proof. She was on the couch, giggling at her screen, typing furiously. I zoomed in, and though I couldn't see the messages, I could see her face. The way she bit her lip, the way her eyes sparkled. It wasn't for me. It hadn't been for me in a long time. I sat there watching it, feeling my chest cave in, wondering when exactly I'd lost her. Or worse, if I ever really had her at all. The next morning, I decided I needed to know more about him. Whoever this guy was, he had taken something from me I didn't even know could be stolen. I searched her emails again, scouring for any clue. That's when I found the hidden folder. It was buried deep in her account, labeled with something innocuous like receipts. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. There were photos. Not the kind you share with a friend, not the kind I can even describe without shaking. It was her with him. Selfies, hotel rooms, drinks, little inside jokes in the captions. She looked happy. So damn happy. Happier than I'd seen her in years. I didn't throw the laptop. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the screen like my life had been rewritten, and I was the only one who didn't get the memo. I felt small, like I'd been replaced by someone better, someone more exciting, and I hated him. God, I hated him without even knowing his last name. That evening, when she came home, I watched her move around the kitchen, humming to herself, chopping vegetables like nothing in the world was wrong. I wanted to yell at her, to throw those photos in her face, but all I could do was sit at the table, pretending to scroll through my phone. She looked at me and smiled, and I realized I didn't even know who this woman was anymore. She was a stranger wearing the skin of the person I used to love. That's when I decided I was going to find him. I needed to see this guy with my own eyes. I needed to know why she was willing to risk everything for him. I told her I had an early meeting the next morning, but in reality, I had something else planned. Something I wasn't sure I'd come back from unchanged. After finding those pictures in her hidden folder, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there all night, staring at the ceiling while she slept next to me, dreaming her secret dreams. I was trembling with anger, but more than that, I was eaten alive by this ugly curiosity. Who was he? What did he have that I didn't? What kind of man makes a wife look at her husband like he's nothing but background noise? The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I lied to my boss and called out of work, pretending I was sick. While Samantha left for her office, I waited 15 minutes, then followed. She didn't even notice me behind her in traffic. I guess I was just another faceless car in the crowd. She drove across town again, not to her office, but to that same coffee shop I'd seen before. And there he was, Mr. Leather Jacket. The man I'd only seen in glimpses, now standing there in broad daylight, leaning casually against his car like a scene from some damn movie. She walked up to him, smiling like a teenager in love, and he hugged her. Not the kind of hug you give a friend or a coworker. No, this was slow, lingering. His hand slid around her waist like he'd done it 100 times before. My stomach churned, but I couldn't look away. I sat there in my car across the street, gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers hurt, watching as they got into his car together. They didn't go far, just a few blocks down to this run-down motel on the edge of town, the kind of place you only rent by the hour. I didn't follow them in. I couldn't. My heart was already splitting open just sitting there in the parking lot, imagining what was happening behind that ugly green door. I felt like a coward, like a man watching his own life burn, and too weak to even try to put out the fire. I sat there for almost 2 hours, just staring at that door. At one point, I thought about storming in, but what would I do? Scream, fight him, cry like the pathetic mess I'd become? No, I couldn't. Instead, I drove away. I went home, parked my car in the driveway, and sat there for 30 minutes trying to feel something other than pure humiliation. When she came home that night, she was glowing. I'm not exaggerating. She had this energy around her, like she'd just stepped out of some dream world where I didn't exist. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted Ty for dinner, as if she hadn't spent the afternoon with him. I wanted to ask her where she'd been. I wanted to tell her I knew, but I didn't. I just nodded, muttered sure, and let her order pad thai like nothing was wrong. That night, when she went to bed, I sat in the living room, staring at the wall until the sun came up. I thought about every moment of our marriage, every smile, every promise, every late-night whisper, and I realized none of it felt real anymore. It was like I'd woken up in some twisted alternate version of my life, where I was just an extra in someone else's love story. I needed to know more about him. I needed to understand who this guy was, because if I didn't, the not knowing would destroy me. The next day I decided I was going to follow him, not her, him, and what I found, it wasn't just shocking. It was something that would change everything I thought I knew about this nightmare. The next part of this confession isn't just about jealousy anymore. It's about obsession. It's about how I lost the version of myself I thought I knew, and how I became someone I never imagined I could be. The morning after my sleepless night, I didn't even wait for Samantha to leave the house. I pretended I had some project to work on and stayed home, parked on the couch with my laptop open but untouched. My entire mind was consumed by him, the man in the leather jacket. I needed to know who he was, what kind of life he had, and why my wife looked at him like he was the only person on this planet. When she finally left for work, I didn't follow her. I drove straight to that coffee shop instead. I sat in my car for almost 2 hours, pretending to check my phone while my eyes scanned every single face that walked by, waiting for him. And then, there he was. He wasn't just some random guy. He carried himself with this confidence that made me sick to my stomach. Tall, broad-shouldered, clean-cut except for that jacket, like he knew he didn't have to try. He ordered a coffee and sat by the window, scrolling through his phone, looking completely at ease while my life was unraveling because of him. I watched him like a hawk, every movement, every little expression, and as much as I wanted to hate him, part of me wanted to be him, because clearly he was everything I wasn't anymore. When he left, I followed him. I didn't even think, I just did it. He drove an old black Jeep that rattled when he pulled out of the parking lot. I kept 2 cars behind him, my heart pounding like I was in some crime drama, sweating through my shirt as I tried not to lose him. He drove across town, through quiet neighborhoods, and then pulled into a driveway. It wasn't some shady bachelor pad. It was a normal house, a family house. There were toys scattered on the front lawn, a pink tricycle by the porch, and a tiny welcome mat that said, "Home Sweet Home." I sat there in shock, staring at the house as he grabbed a briefcase from his trunk and walked inside like any regular husband coming home from work. My hands went cold. Did he have a family? Kids? Was he married too? The thought hit me like a brick. Was my wife just someone else's dirty secret while he went home to tuck his kids into bed? Something about that image made my anger shift. I wasn't just mad at Samantha anymore. I was mad at him. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about 2 people living lies so deep, they were dragging me down with them. I stayed parked outside his house for over an hour, watching through the windshield like some deranged detective. Eventually, I saw a woman come out, his wife, I guess. She was carrying a toddler on her hip, smiling as she waved at a neighbor. She looked so normal, so happy, completely unaware that her husband was meeting mine in some rundown motel hours earlier. My stomach twisted. I felt like I had stumbled into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I drove home shaking, gripping the wheel so tightly I thought it would snap. When I walked through the door, Samantha was in the kitchen, humming to herself while chopping vegetables. She looked up, smiled, and asked, "You're home early. Everything okay?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the truth in her face, tell her I'd just met her secret lover's family, that I'd seen the whole disgusting double life they were living. But instead, I muttered something about traffic and went upstairs. I locked the bathroom door, turned on the faucet, and stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the guy staring back. My eyes looked hollow, my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. That night, while she slept, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to sit here and let this eat me alive. If they wanted to play games with my life, I was going to play too. And that's when I decided I'd confront him first. Not her. Not yet. I wanted to see the look in his eyes when he realized I wasn't some clueless fool. The next morning, I followed him again. But what I discovered that day, I swear, it changed everything I thought I knew about this story. I thought I was ready. I thought I had it all planned out. The perfect confrontation where I would look this man in the eye and make him understand that I wasn't just going to sit back while he dismantled my life. But nothing went the way I imagined. That morning, I woke up before Samantha, my stomach churning like I'd swallowed stones. I slipped out of bed, got dressed quietly, and left without breakfast. My hands were clammy on the steering wheel as I drove toward his neighborhood. I'd been replaying scenarios in my head all night. What I'd say, whether I'd yell or stay cold and calculated. Would I tell his wife? Would I expose them both? All I knew was that I couldn't keep living with this gnawing hole in my chest. I parked 2 houses down from his place, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I waited, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup, until I saw the front door open. He stepped out wearing that same damn leather jacket, holding a travel mug, looking like the kind of man who had the world in his pocket. I clenched my fists and waited until he got into his Jeep, and then I followed him. I didn't expect him to notice me, but halfway to wherever he was going, he slowed down. Way down. My stomach dropped. Did he see me in his mirror? He pulled into a quiet gas station, and before I knew what I was doing, I followed him in. I figured, fine, this was it. This was the moment. I parked, got out, and walked straight toward him, my legs shaking but my mind screaming at me to keep going. "Ryan," I said, my voice more strained than I'd intended. He turned, confused, and for a split second I almost lost my nerve. His expression wasn't guilty or defensive. It was just blank, like he had no idea who I was. "Do I know you?" he asked, and it took every ounce of self-control not to grab him by that smug collar and shake the truth out of him. "You don't," I said, my voice trembling, "but I know you. I know who you've been meeting. I know about the coffee shop, the motel, my wife." Something shifted in his face then, like a shadow crossing his features. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look surprised. He just stared at me. For a moment, I thought he might actually say something, maybe even apologize, but instead he glanced around the parking lot, lowered his voice, and said something I'll never forget. "You shouldn't be here. You don't know what you're getting into." The way he said it, it wasn't threatening, but it wasn't apologetic either. It was strange. Almost like he was warning me, not because he cared, but because there was something bigger behind all of this, something I didn't understand yet. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" I shot back, but he just shook his head, tossed his coffee cup into the trash, and got back into his Jeep. He drove off without another word, leaving me standing there like an idiot, my pulse racing, my mind spinning with questions. I stood in that parking lot for a long time, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. The way he'd looked at me, it wasn't the look of a man caught in an affair. It was the look of someone who knew something I didn't, something I wasn't supposed to know. When I got home that afternoon, Samantha was in the kitchen, humming and making sandwiches like nothing had changed. I watched her, and suddenly I didn't just feel betrayed. I felt completely out of the loop, like I was living in some twisted movie where everyone else knew the plot except me. I wanted to ask her about Ryan right then, but something in me hesitated. I needed to know more before I confronted her. I needed to know why this man acted like I'd just stumbled into something much darker than an affair. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind turning over every possible scenario. And then, just after 2 a.m., I heard it, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. I glanced over, and the name flashing on the screen wasn't Ryan. It was something far worse. If you've been following my story, you know I thought I was just dealing with a cheating wife and some smooth-talking stranger named Ryan. But when her phone buzzed at 2 a.m. that night, I realized this was much bigger than an affair. I rolled over and squinted at the screen, expecting to see his name, but what I saw made my blood run cold. The contact name wasn't Ryan at all. It was saved as Officer Carter. I just froze there, staring at the glowing screen, my mind going in 100 directions at once. Why was my wife getting texts from someone with that name at 2 in the morning? Why did it feel like the name was deliberately chosen to sound official? I glanced at her. She was fast asleep, breathing softly, completely unaware that I was seconds away from picking up her phone and unlocking a new level of hell. I didn't even care that my hands were shaking anymore. I grabbed the phone, swiped the screen, and opened the message. We need to talk, now, before he finds out. I swear my heart skipped a beat. My vision blurred as I read it again and again. Before who finds out? Talk about what? Every piece of me wanted to shake her awake and demand answers, but something inside me told me to wait, to watch. So I did. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, staring at the ceiling while her phone sat inches away from me, glowing with unread truths. The next morning, she was quiet. Too quiet. Usually, she'd make small talk over coffee, asking about my day, but this time, she barely looked me in the eye. She was texting someone under the table, her fingers flying over the screen with this urgency she couldn't mask. That's when I realized I couldn't keep pretending. I needed to know what the hell was going on, whether it was an affair, a secret life, or something even worse. I waited until she left the house, claiming she was going to run errands. As soon as the door closed, I grabbed my jacket and followed her, staying 2 cars behind. My pulse was racing the whole time. I kept asking myself, what if it's nothing? What if I'm destroying my own mind for nothing? But deep down, I knew better. She didn't drive to a store or a coffee shop this time. She drove to a parking lot near the edge of town, the kind of place that feels like it doesn't belong to any map. And then I saw him, Ryan, leather jacket and all, standing next to a blacked-out SUV. But there was someone else too, a man in plain clothes, tall, wearing a badge on a chain around his neck. I parked far away and crouched down in my seat, watching as the 3 of them talked in hushed, urgent voices. My wife's body language was frantic, hands waving, pointing, shaking her head. Ryan kept glancing over his shoulder like they were being watched, and the man with the badge just stood there, arms crossed, like he was in charge of something I couldn't even begin to understand. I couldn't hear them, but I saw her face. She wasn't just nervous, she was scared, terrified. I'd never seen her like that. This wasn't the face of someone sneaking around on her husband for thrills. This was someone in the middle of something dangerous. My stomach twisted as I tried to piece it all together. Was Ryan blackmailing her? Was this Officer Carter guy really a cop? Or was this just some cover story? After a few minutes, they all got into separate cars and drove off in different directions. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, feeling like I'd just witnessed something I wasn't supposed to see. Every theory I'd had about my wife being unfaithful suddenly felt too small, too shallow. Whatever was going on here, it wasn't just about love or betrayal. It felt bigger, darker. When she came home that evening, she acted normal again, like nothing happened. She even laughed when she asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I agreed, pretending to be tired, but inside my head, I was screaming. I couldn't focus on anything except the image of her standing in that parking lot with Ryan and that badge-wearing stranger. I knew I had to find out the truth, no matter how deep this went. So that night, after she fell asleep, I did something reckless. I found her phone, opened her messages, and this time, I didn't just read them. I took pictures of every conversation with Ryan and Officer Carter, saving them all on my own phone. And that's when I found the message that made me feel like I'd stepped into someone else's life. It wasn't about love or affairs, it was about me. What I'm about to tell you is how everything I thought I knew turned upside down, and how, against all odds, it didn't end in flames, but in something I never saw coming. The truth that saved us. That night, when I scrolled through the screenshots I'd taken of her conversations, I found a message that froze me in place. He's starting to notice. I can't keep this from him much longer. We have to tell him before it gets worse. For a moment, I thought my world was ending all over again. Tell me what? What was this sick game they were playing behind my back? The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. I confronted her, not with anger, but with the quiet desperation of a man who just needed answers. I told her I knew about Ryan, I knew about the late-night messages, and I knew about Officer Carter. Her face went pale. She sat down at the kitchen table and started to cry. Not the guilty tears of someone caught, but the trembling sobs of someone carrying a secret too heavy to bear. She told me everything. Ryan wasn't her lover. He was her brother. A brother I'd never met because their family had been estranged for years. He'd been in trouble, a serious mess involving debt and the wrong people, and she'd been helping him in secret, terrified that I'd see her family's chaos and judge her. Officer Carter? He wasn't even a real cop. He was a private investigator they had hired to negotiate with someone who'd been threatening Ryan. It was dangerous, messy, and complicated, and she hadn't told me because she thought she was protecting me from all of it. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to be angry that she'd kept this from me, but another part, maybe the bigger part, was just relieved. Relieved that it wasn't what I thought, that I hadn't lost her to someone else. That night, we talked for hours. She showed me every message, every email, every single detail of what had been happening. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. In the days that followed, I met Ryan. He wasn't what I expected. He thanked me for not giving up on her, for being there even when I didn't know the truth. It was awkward at first, but we actually talked, really talked. And I realized he was just a guy who'd made some bad choices, trying to make things right. Samantha and I started seeing a therapist together, not because our love was gone, but because we realized we needed to rebuild trust. And slowly, we did. Now, as I'm telling you this, I feel like I'm not just confessing a story of suspicion and heartbreak. I'm confessing how close I came to losing everything because I didn't ask the right questions soon enough. Sometimes the truth isn't as ugly as we imagine. Sometimes it's just waiting for us to stop being afraid of it. So, here's my question for you, the people watching this on Forsaken Joe. Have you ever discovered that something you thought was terrible turned out to be something completely different? Something that changed you in a way you didn't expect? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching and supporting Forsaken Joe. Your stories, your comments, and your voices are what keep this channel alive.